Hey, what's up everyone? Dragon back again, here to tell you that you should be watching SSSS Gridman. So Gridman is what I'm going to call it for short because I don't feel like saying S 4 times in a row, rapid fire, is a 2018 anime that is created by Studio Trigger, and basically work with like kind of the creatives like the Ultra series, who's done like Ultraman and what have you, and it's essentially a Kaiju anime, very much in the spirit of like Ultraman or Spectreman, Zone Fighter, that kind of thing. For those of you guys who are kind of familiar with those series, where basically kind of this Sentai-looking warrior giant basically fights off Kaiju to kind of usually defend his city and or the world. And Gridman is essentially falls within this genre. It was actually a live-action tokusatsu series, many years ago that they've kind of readapted into now an anime. And for those of you who are kind of familiar with the Kaiju genre, it's a great love letter to it. A lot of the action that you see is very much in the style of kind of classic tokusatsu, Kaiju cinema, right down to even how the monsters themselves are animated and drawn, and how they move around. It feels like a kind of an actor in a big suit. And a big part of that is because the Kaiju in this show are created by somebody, so they're kind of artificial constructs. So that plays into kind of the artificial aspect to how they move and feel, rather than feel like kind of biological organisms. They kind of feel more like kind of big classic guys in suits when they fight in the city. But the series focuses on a young man who basically kind of wakes up with amnesia, and kind of discovers that he is connected to this character, this figure called Gridman, who kind of he sees inside of this television, who kind of can't really exist in our world, but kind of exists in a digital spectrum. And when kind of fusing with him, can appear in the world as Gridman himself to do battle against these Kaiju. And one of the interesting things they notice is that in the distance around their city, they can see these giant monolithic kind of Kaiju, these big unmoving beings that nobody else seems to be able to see, just them. And every time a Kaiju attacks and they have to defend the city, with him merging with Gridman, after that everything gets reset. And nobody else remembers anything. It's like nothing ever happened. They remember, but nobody else does. And they quickly realize that the Kaiju are being created by one of their classmates, who is essentially the god of this world. It's kind of strange, but they realize that this is a world. I guess it's minor spoilers, but it's kind of the big plot thing. So it's really not. It's not something you're gonna really be able to avoid if you're looking up anything about this. But it's not, this isn't like the crux of the story is, that she's essentially the god of this world and created everything in it, including the people, but more or less why and what it represents, which I'll leave that for you guys to discover. But in doing so, they basically kind of realize that, okay, that these beings are essentially the manifestations of her own imagination. That is, how do you ultimately, the monsters themselves that they fight are really just instruments. The real threat is a person. It is a person they know. It is a person they go to school with. It is a person by all intents and purposes, looks like them, feels like them. So even though they know she is the enemy per se, it is very difficult for them to kind of come to terms with the fact that, in theory, she would have to be the one they combat. She would have to be the one they destroy, because until she's gone, the monsters, the Kaiju, are just going to keep coming. So it's a story about how we define ourselves. The story is really less about the monsters, like any classic Kaiju narrative, is that they are essentially metaphors. They are manifestations of our own hubris, our own id, our own fears, or our own failings, if you will. The Kaiju represent kind of the monstrosities within ourselves. And this young girl who creates these monsters, who was so dissatisfied with the world the way it was, that she created essentially one of her own. And the act of creating a world, the act of creating people, individuals, to simply kind of serve her own personal whims and tastes, is a very monstrous thing. So for her to kind of retcon her own world, to kind of fix something, to kind of undo something, she uses monsters to do it. And these monsters represent the nature of these acts, the level of how heinous these acts are. They are monstrous in nature, and therefore the instruments she wields are monsters themselves. Kaiju, the greatest monsters of all. So that's really what the kaiju represent in this show. It's the level of monstrosity that one person will aspire to, if you will, to achieve something so simple and so selfishly. That what she is going through is something that we've all experienced, that we all go through. The feeling of being lonely, the feeling of loss, the feeling of not being accepted, the feeling that you're the only one in the world who's going through what you're going through. And even though intellectually you're not, that doesn't help you in the moment. That when you're feeling lost, when you're feeling alone, when you're feeling depressed, and you have that void inside of you that just nothing can fill it, in that moment you feel like you are alone in the world, that everyone around you are just automatons, or just inanimate objects. And she created a world where she tried to fill it with the people who would love her. And there's a great moment where she confronts one of the characters, and even says that I'm the bad guy, and you want to hate me, but you can't, because I designed you to love me. And yet, because of that, it is false. It is insincere. The love that she feels from other people, she knows it's by design. So because of that, it does not fulfill that need for her. And like everything else in this world, it is fake. It is false. But these people who find themselves in this world now are individuals. And in spite of this, they are their own people. It's kind of a bit of a Frankenstein's monster kind of story, in the sense that, Victor Frankenstein created a monster. He created this being. This being exists because of him. But once he did that, he created an individual. And now this individual is not a slave to him. These are real people, for lack of a better term, and able to think and feel on their own. So when she does something to them, they feel it, they experience it. They are not extensions of her. They might have been created by her, but the moment she brought them into being, they became their own entities, their own individuals. And it's really a story about kind of basically, it really doesn't matter where you come from, what your background is. We all kind of go through the same thing, whether you're this being that created your own world but you still feel lonely, or you are the beings within it. You are individuals, and you're going to go through the spectrum of emotion. She created human beings, and as such, they are subject to the ebb and flow of the human condition. They are not apart from it. And she basically kind of realizes that these beings that she created to essentially be above, she finds herself basically just parallel to them, equal to them, because ultimately you create something in your own image, and you're just creating you with all your failings. She created mankind, and in doing so, created a world that probably wasn't all that different from the one she was fleeing, that she was trying to get away from. And again, the kaiju themselves represent the over the top nature of what it is she did to essentially achieve something so basic, something that we ourselves go through in life. We ourselves, we're trying to find just groups of people that we belong to, trying to find acceptance, trying to find a place where we just feel like we fit. And in doing so, some people, you join a club, you join a pottery club, you take an art class, you go online, download a dating app and try to meet people, whatever, join a chat room, something, the good conventions, start a D&D group, whatever. Things in life that we would go through to try to do to accomplish that goal. And yet, to achieve the same thing, she did something, beyond belief. She did something godlike. And ultimately, and therefore, the means in which she utilizes to kind of achieve that goal are over the top themselves. Kaiju. So it kind of fits, the nature of, what she feels she has to do. And in doing it that way, you come to understand that her biggest sense of disconnect is that she thinks that what she's going through is so monumental that it would take an act of God to fix. And it shows that, wow, that she kind of she missed the point. She was so detached and removed from basically her peers that she didn't realize that A, she probably wasn't the only one going through this, and B, there are much simpler ways to solving this problem than, you know, playing God. So it is, the greatest tragedy here is the fact that she did what she did, that she felt that this was the only recourse. And there's more to the story than that. There is another character that was kind of manipulating her and twisting her and kind of steering her in certain directions, and kind of came to her at a moment of probably at her lowest point and gave her an option that she might not have conceived herself, but once presented with it, did not understand that what this individual was offering her was insane, and that whatever it is she was going through was not worth doing what this person was suggesting. But I'll leave that for you guys to kind of, you know, discover for yourself when you watch this show. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Gridman. I mean, again, it's for those of you guys who are familiar with, you know, kaiju, you know, cinema, tokusatsu, you know, effects, you know, the original Gridman, Ultraman, and all those kind of like, even like just like basic, you know, Super Sentai and all that. You know, it's basically just all that in animated form. So if you love that kind of stuff, I really think this show is just up your alley. If you're kind of just, if you're not really into that stuff, maybe you're into anime just, you know, on its own. It's a great series, good characters, the animation is gorgeous. I mean, Studio Trigger have kind of emerged within, you know, the past, you know, half decade or more now as one of, I think, the premier animation studios in Japan. They're definitely one of the top tier right now. They're the ones who are really pushing the genre, doing a lot of great things with it. So for no other reason, it's a great looking show. So watch it for that if you're into anime. And if you're just not into either the kaiju stuff or anime stuff, but you just want to check out something neat, I would recommend just checking it out, because visually it's not something you're going to just see every day. There is a spectacle quality to it. And I think the story is there. I think it's an interesting story. The first episode is very bare bones. It feels just like an old, like, episodic show. And I think it's kind of a bit of a bait and switch, because you think you know what you're getting, and then it pulls like an Evangelion really quick, really early. Not to that extreme, for those of you guys who know what I'm talking about. But it takes a darker, more psychological turn pretty quickly, and it, you know, it's jarring in a good way, but you kind of start watching and thinking it's going to be one thing, and then you're like, oh wow, okay. But yeah, so if you're just interested in just watching some with an interesting story and what I feel are compelling characters, I would check this out too. And who knows, this could be your gateway anime. This could be the thing that gets you into anime and, or, you know, kaiju shows and movies and what have you. But anyway, yeah, so SSSS Gridman. Have you seen it? If so, what did you think? If you have not, right now it is currently streaming on Crunchyroll, which is a kind of an anime streaming service. I will, at the time of this recording, I do not believe there is any physical media out of it yet. I will double check. If so, as always, I will leave links in the description section below. You can go pick it up. If not, I'll just put some TBAs, and when they do become available, you know, I'll go ahead and add the link. So just kind of, you know, within the next month or so, just kind of keep checking. Usually, probably within the next few months, they'll start releasing Blu-rays and or DVDs, so you'll be able to pick it up and add it to your collection of anime if you're old like me and still collect physical media. But if you're all a bunch of youngins, then you guys probably just all have just digital versions of anything. But anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching, and as always, I will catch you in the next one. Peace!